Hi everyone, my name is Kirsty and I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a tie blanket. So first things first, we're going to go over our material list. For this blanket, you're going to need 2 pieces of fleece fabric. Make sure that it's fleece. You can have anti-pill fleece or blizzard fleece. Just make sure that it's fleece and not any other type of fabric, as they tend to unravel as you start cutting them. This blanket in particular is a Christmas present, and it's an extra large blanket, so it's going to be 2 pieces that are 3 yards each by 2 yards wide. Other materials that you're going to need clothespins to keep the blanket together. You're going to need a pair of good fabric scissors. You're also going to need some type of marker to mark out your corners. And then you're going to need something that is about 4 inches on all 4 sides, and I just happen to have this coaster that's going to work perfect. As you can see with this blanket, it's very large, so make sure that you have enough space to lay it out completely flat. The next step that you're going to want to do is lay out the fabric, and with this piece in particular, it had a white strip of fabric on the side that I've cut off. So if you have anything like that on your piece of fabric that you have, it's up to you if you want to keep it on. I usually tend to take it off. This is going to be the bottom part of the blanket while I'm working on it. So make sure that when it's all complete, that you have the writing and logos the right way instead of the wrong way. This is going to be the next step in the blanket making process. You're going to lay out the second piece of fabric on top of the first piece of fabric, and you want to make sure that they're pretty much the same size. Once you start cutting, if they're not the same size, you're going to run into issues, and then the blanket's going to be lopsided, and you don't want that to happen. As you can see here, I do have some excess fabric down here at the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that up and make it even. There's a couple other spots where I'm going to have to do the same, and then we will go from there. The entire blanket is now even. I've gone ahead and cut off the excess fabric that was down here at the bottom. So the next step is going to be to pin a couple spots along each side with the clothespins, that way the fabric doesn't move, and then we will cut the 4-inch squares out of each corner. When cutting the corners, I usually like to put a clothespin relatively close to where I'll be cutting out the corners, and then I will also put a clothespin about halfway and then to the other corner, and then on the long side, same thing, about 2 clothespins, and then the next corner, and then we have the next corner and 2 clothespins on this side as well. Once we cut out the corners, we'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the clothespins, and then we'll start cutting the strips that we'll be tying for the entire tie blanket. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm actually going to be using this coaster that I have. It turns out that it's the exact size that I need. If you don't have a coaster, you can use a ruler, or if you have a measuring tape, that works just as well, as long as you can measure out 4 inches. In the past, I have also used the actual square that I've cut out from past blankets. So you go ahead and take, in this case, your coaster, place it on the corner, just like that, and then with the marker, I'm going to mark where I will be making the cuts. So we'll have one line there, make the corner, and then the other line right here. So a line on this side, a line to mark your corner, and a line down here at this end. Okay, so now that I've cut out my 4-inch square out of this corner, I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the other 3 corners. Make sure that when you cut the corner, you're cutting through both pieces of fabric. That's important. You don't want to cut one piece and then go back and cut the other. You're cutting both pieces at one time. Now that all 4 corners are cut, the next step is going to be to cut the ties for the tie blanket. What you're going to want to do is you're going to go about an inch apart from where you initially cut. So about an inch apart, and then you're going to cut down 4 inches to where your corner is. You're going to do this along all 4 sides of the blanket, creating all of your ties. Now if you come up to a clothespin, it's okay, just go ahead and move it, cut your strip, and then you can either put it back or leave it where you moved it. It's not a big deal. The clothespins are just to keep the fabric pieces together so they don't end up moving on you. Eventually, all 4 sides of the blanket is going to look like this with all of your little ties. At this point in the blanket making stage, it's very important that you have enough time to finish it. Once you've started cutting those ties, the last thing you want to do is fold that blanket up, put it away, and then come back to it, because chances are when you lay it back out again, it's going to be uneven and you'll probably have to start all over. So once you start cutting your ties, make sure you have time to finish it. Usually a blanket this size takes me about 3 hours, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit less, depending on how many distractions I have, how many dogs I have walking on the blanket that I have to shush away. So it all just depends. Just make sure you have enough time to finish it once you've started cutting those ties. An important note to make when you're cutting your ties is if you start at one end, you want to stay on that end and work all the way down till you finish. You don't want to start at one end, get halfway through, start at the other end, and meet back in the middle, because you'll end up with uneven ties. If you have somebody working on the blanket with you, my best advice would be to put a measuring tape from one corner all the way across to the other corner, and make sure that you're cutting at exactly 1 inch increments all the way across so that all the pieces end up the same. In this case, I've just eyeballed the 1 inch mark. For the most part, I did pretty well up until the last one, but that's okay. So now that I've got this side done, I'll go ahead and start working on the other side, the long side, to the other short side, and then back to the long side. Now that all the ties are cut on all 4 sides of the blanket, it is time to start tying. I like to use the square knot method, which is going to be left over right and then right over left. As you start tying, the blanket may start to pull a little bit, so all you have to do is just stretch it out and you'll get rid of the pulling. I also like to tie them this way so that the opposite fabric ends up on the opposite tie when it folds over. So the purple will show up on the other side, and then the kings will show up on this side. Once you've finished all your ties, this will be your final product of your tie blanket. Once you've completed all your ties, you now have your tie blanket. I hope this video helped, and good luck with yours.